Oi! Yes, it's been so long. I haven't done anything on my channel in over a week, you guys, but I'm back with a very special guest, my brother in MMA stats. You know him as the Monkmatician, the the guy that pairs up with me like peanut butter and jelly over here, man, when we get together and talk about numbers for MMA stats. And we got my guy Smooth Jimmy is also in the house, ready to break down this fight. But first, we gotta announce the guy that's on the screen with me here, my man at Monk Maddox, the Monkmatician. What's up, my man? How you feeling today?
Oh, I'm excuse me. I'm feeling great, Uncle Weezy. Glad you made it back in one piece from your vacay. I know you said it was great, so I'm super happy about that, and I'm very excited to jump into this fight with you tonight.
Yeah, we got a good one here, man. We're going to be breaking down for you guys Jared Gooden versus Randy Rude Boy Brown. This is a
Rude boy.
veteran, and both of these guys are veterans, really. We got some numbers for you guys. We have got a whole bunch of numbers to go through in the tail of the tape, the pro experience, the UFC experience, the finish stats, the striking offense and defense, the grappling offense and defense, the strength of schedule, the last five. And then Monk's got even more numbers to go through. So we're going to, and then we've both been watching tape on these guys as well. So we want to take you through every aspect of this fight, see if we can find any areas in this line for you guys to make money on. And let's do what we always do around here. I'm going to zoom in on this page, Monk. Let's get these numbers just a little bit bigger here. I'm going to get them up to 150%. And we're going to start with the tail of the tape, get into the measurables for these two cats. We got a 31-year-old Randy Rude Boy Brown going up against a 27-year-old Jared Gooden. Randy Brown going to be the much taller, longer man in this matchup. He is 6'3", an absolutely huge welterweight with a 78-inch reach. Both of these guys are orthodox fighters. While Jared Gooden going to be a little bit shorter, he's got just at a 1-inch reach disadvantage here. According to the latest information on Tapology, I got Randy Brown fighting out of Budokan Academy, and we got Jared Gooden coming out of X3 Sports, according to Tapology. And Sure Dog, I hope that's right. And then we got Randy Brown, born in America but raised in Jamaica. And we got Jared Gooden fighting out of the United States. And when we look at the pro experience numbers here, Monk, it's kind of interesting, because we see Randy Brown being 4 years older, having one more year in the game, but he's got 7 less fights than Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden, actually the guy with the experience advantage here. 24 fights for Gooden, 17 for Brown. We got an 18-6 record for Gooden, 13-4 for Brown. But, over 65 more minutes of cage time for Jared Gooden. The average fight time about the same at about 8.5 minutes for both of them. Randy Brown, 7-year career. Jared Gooden, 6-year career. So if you look at that 6-year, 1-month career for Jared Gooden, 24 professional fights, obviously you don't need me to tell you 4 fights a year is you're staying really busy. While we got Randy Brown fighting about 2.5 fights a year. But the biggest experience here, or the experience difference when we look here at Monk at the stats, is the UFC experience, as we've got 11 out of Randy Brown's 17 professional fights have been at the UFC level, while for Jared Gooden, it's only 1/8 of his professional fights, 3 of his 24 fights taking place at the UFC level. What are you thinking so far, Monk, on these stats?
I mean, excuse me, that is pretty surprising that Gooden has that many more fights than Brown. Like you said, he's been fighting 7 more months than Brown and has 7 more fights than he does. So that is surprising. The UFC experience, though, that is, I mean, I don't have to say it, but of the utmost importance here. Randy Brown, a decent record, 7-4 in the UFC. Jared Gooden still has a bit to prove, though. 1-2. I know he did lose to 2, pretty good guys. One was named Nurmagomedov, but he's still got a little bit to prove here. I'm pretty excited about this one. Randy Brown, 47% of his UFC or of his total career fights have ended by way of knockout. 6 wins, 2 losses, and then Gooden has 37.5% of his fights have ended by knockout. He has 8 knockout wins, so we got 14 knockout wins between 31 31 fights here, 11 subs between 31 fights. So what's that? 25 finishes out of 31 fights. That's very interesting to me. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I definitely like to look at is these finish stats, because when you're looking at how we're going to attack time props in any fight, you got to look at the finish stats, for and against. Those are crucial categories here. And we look at Randy Brown overall in those 13 wins, 38% by sub, 46% by knockout. So that's 6 knockout wins. That is 5 submission wins, 11 out of 13, like you said. And then on the other side, we got a 77% finish rate for Mr. Gooden, so that's 14. So 14 and 11, 25 out of 31 is what I'm showing inside the distance. That's over an 80% finish rate if you combine it, on the win side. And then if you look on the loss side, we got 4 career losses for Randy Brown. 3 of them have come inside the distance, but it's Jared Gooden that's really hard to finish. He's only been finished in 1 of his 6 professional losses. So, that's where the time prop gets a little bit tricky here, because Randy Brown is the favorite. So if you're thinking that this fight finishes inside the distance, you're thinking that Randy Brown finishes Jared Gooden more times than Gooden finishes Brown, simply because of the implied probability of the line right now, which has Randy Brown as better than a -200 favorite.
Yeah.
But even in the UFC, we've got Randy Brown 72% finish rate in his 7 wins. So 5 of his 7 wins coming inside the distance. And Jared Gooden's only win in the UFC has come inside the distance. So, 6 out of 8, 75% finish rate in the UFC for these guys. And a 75% finish rate against for Randy Brown, but for Jared Gooden, both of his losses to Alan Jouban and Abubakar Nurmagomedov, both of those have been by decision here. So if we're looking at this time prop here, and I am seeing right now a fight doesn't go to decision, that's looking like it's on the aggregate around -180. Does that tickle your fancy at all, my man?
-180. I mean, it would if Jared Gooden wasn't so difficult to knock out, like you said. Aggregate, 75% of the UFC wins are by finish, 50% are by losses. So Randy Brown has lost 2 of his 4. Jared Gooden, or no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. He's been KO, or he's been finished 3 out of 6, and Gooden's never been finished. So, or 3 at God, I'm sorry, I'm all off on my numbers. Anyways, Brown has been finished. Jared Gooden has not inside the UFC. -180. That's going to be tough, because I see a lot of people picking Jared Gooden. So honestly, I think if you're going to do the inside the distance, you're probably backing Gooden, thinking he gets a finish. Is my thought. The 180 for Randy Brown, I don't know. I wanna say I like it, but that just might be a little too wide for me against a guy that's never been finished.
Yeah, I think Jared Gooden's been only finished once by knockout, but I believe it was by a middleweight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and that was outside the UFC, right?
It was outside. It was Bruno Oliveira. Loss, strikes against cage, and that's in 53 seconds of round 1. And that was a middleweight bout. And, and Bruno Oliveira is 8-3, so he's no joke. This guy's a well-traveled guy, and he's fought on the Contender Series. He's fought for the championship against Josh Fremd in LFA. So, a credentialed veteran. And, if we look at these losses that are on Gooden's record here on Tapology, Abubakar Nurmagomedov, Alan Jouban, Bruno Oliveira, Mike Graves. Graves, a fantastic wrestler. Julian Williams back in 2017, who was an 8-1 fighter at the time of that fight. And then Dave Vitke, 17-12 fighter. And that's back all the way back in 2016, And before that, he started off his career with a 6-fight winning streak. He's got wins over Micah Miller. He's got a win over Cody Wilson, Will Santiago. The names on his resume. Nick Stoltze, probably the best name on his resume. And then you look at guys like Trent McCown, Jay Jackson, Marcel Stamps, Will Santiago, Steve Newell, 9-0 Steve Newell, Cody Wilson, Ladarius Jackson, Sean Kilgus. And then as we go a little bit further, the Micah Miller name is probably the biggest name on his resume prior to the UFC, a guy with a 20-9 record. But that was his last fight. That was Micah Miller's last fight. So, yeah, very interesting how much experience Gooden has. But if we look at the names on his resume, they're just not there in comparison to Randy Brown. When we look at some of the scalps on Brown's resume here, we've got Alex Oliveira, Warley Alves, Brian Barberena, Mickey Gall, Brian Camozzi, Eric Montano, and then prior to Matt Dwyer. But prior to the UFC, a win over Ben Brewer, 11-3, Rocky Edwards, Mike Winters, Leonard Simpson, Steve Terrell. So the pre-UFC wins just as impressive as Brown's, but as Gooden's, but it's the UFC wins, and then losses to guys like Luque and Bilal Muhammad and Nico Price. These are some really good fighters. These are guys that probably beat Gooden as well. But the thing about Gooden that people, I think why there might be a little bit of value in this line, Monk, is that experience advantage that he actually does have over Brown here.
That's true. And that's going to be the biggest thing. And I'm excited to get into the strength of schedule when that time comes to really kind of dive into the numbers behind all that experience. Because that's really, I think that's going to be the key in breaking down this fight is really, how good is Jared Gooden? Alan Jouban and Abubakar Nurmagomedov, they're not cans by any mean. And those were his first two fights in the UFC. So, they didn't give him an easy path exactly. And Randy Brown, like you said, that loss to Nico Price, that was a pretty close fight for the most part, it looks like. But he got caught, I believe, with those upward hammer fists or something from the ground. He got knocked out.
Hammer fist from the bottom, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just got caught, and boy, was that something. That was a hell of a knockout.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was a hell of a knockout. But, Randy Brown is susceptible to that kind of a knockout.
Yep. But then, he did well against, Barberena, Warley Alves, hey, he's the guy that beat Colby Covington. So, he should be fighting for the title next. No, I'm just kidding. But he did lose to Luque, which is no joke. And then looked really good against Cowboy Oliveira, subbed Cowboy Oliveira, which I found extremely impressive. In the first round, under 3 minutes, subbed him no problem.
With one arm, too.
Yeah, that's right.
He tucked that arm behind Cowboy's shoulder. It was a cheeky choke because, Cowboy was fighting the hands, but Brown just choked him out. And then living up to his nickname, Rude Boy, flipped him off after beating him. And then when they asked him, why are you flipping him off after you beat him? He said, you got to tune into my Twitch channel and I'll tell you all about it or something. I'm like, come on, man. Just Twitch. You got the mic in front of you. Yeah, these damn kids today, Monk, with their Twitch and their cell phones.
Demetrius Johnson.
Back in my day, we didn't have any of that shit. But anyway.
Hit me on the SkyTel.
So let's get into these striking stats because this is going to be interesting here, man. We've got a really good sample size of 11 fights for Randy Brown, and then we've got, a 3-fight sample size for Jared Gooden. But let's start off by looking at Brown here. He's landing 3.72 significant strikes a minute and absorbing almost one less in 2.79. Showing 47.73% striking accuracy, some really good power for the welterweight division, landing 3 knockdowns in 400 significant strikes landed. That's 0.75% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed, 0.42 knockdowns per 15 minutes. The striking defense up at about 53.7% for Randy Brown. He is getting knocked down, though. He's been knocked down 2 times in the 300 strikes that he's absorbed for 0.67% knockdowns per total significant strikes absorbed. That means he's getting knocked down 0.28 times per 15 minutes, so not a ton. And he's only, absorbed 300 significant strikes in 11 fights. While Jared Gooden is really getting outlanded by an alarming number here. Landing 5.04 significant strikes a minute. So landing, almost 1.3 significant strikes more a minute than Randy Brown is. But Here's the problem is that he's absorbing 7.55 significant strikes a minute. Much less accurate, although throwing much more volume is Jared Gooden. But 42% accuracy. The power numbers are right there with Randy Brown, though, which is encouraging. That he's landed one knockdown in 157 significant strikes landed, and about the same number of knockdowns per 15 minutes, and he's never been knocked down. But that being said, if you go back and you watch that Abubakar Nurmagomedov fight, a guy who is known for his grappling, Abubakar pieced him up for the first 2 rounds of that fight. And every time Abubakar landed heavily, he let him off the hook. I think that he actually could have, if he had pressed the issue in that fight, could have had Jared Gooden and in a lot more trouble, and maybe even gotten him out of there in a couple of places, because he was landing on him quite impressively there. I'm not sure if you saw that fight, but he that was rough to watch. And when you watch Randy Brown striking at length, you could really picture him getting caught with something nasty, like that right cross that Brown caught Oliveira with in the first round before he finished him.
Yeah,
that was how he got him down. What are you seeing in these striking numbers? I know you've got some extra striking numbers that I don't have access to.
I mean, Gooden, like you said, the volume thrown is astronomical. 11.85 significant strikes thrown per minute. He gets his opponents throw just under 15 strikes a minute in the UFC, and this is from Joe Ban and Nurmagomedov. Like 15 strikes a minute, that's crazy. So yeah, that significant strike differential of -2.5 is huge. Randy Brown is the more efficient striker, 1.44% efficiency compared to -8% from Gooden. Brown has fought almost 44% of his total fight time at distance. Gooden has fought almost 81% of his total fight time at distance. The interesting thing is, let's see here. When Brown throws over 100 significant strikes, and it's happened in 4 fights, he lands about 4.73. So it turns up his strikes landed by 1 per minute. And he's only won half of those fights. When Jared Gooden throws over 100 significant strikes, it's happened twice in the UFC. He actually outlands Randy Brown, 4.77 significant strikes landed per minute, but he has won 0 of those fights. So not really sure what those numbers say. It just seems like Jared Gooden, if he's getting bombed on, he tries to keep up, and it has not necessarily paid off for him. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the advanced striking numbers. Both guys, when they've scored knockdowns in their fights, they've won 100% of those fights. What kind of advanced numbers are we looking at here? Randy Brown has a 1.18 head strike differential per minute. He's pretty much positive at every location: head, body, distance, clinch, ground. The only one he's negative in is leg strikes by negative 0.73. But on the other side, if you look at Gooden, he is negative striking differentials everywhere. From every single, he gets outstruck to the head by 1.45 strikes a minute. He gets outstruck from distance by 2.5 strikes a minute, half a body strike difference. Like, he's getting pieced up everywhere. And maybe a lot of that was the Abubakar fight, like you said. But then only then he got 60 strikes landed on him. When he fought Joe Ban hit him with 168 significant strikes. Pretty much no control time. That whole fight was on the feet, and Gooden just got worked. It seems like I don't have the round by round data in front of me. I mean, but he got landed 11.2 strikes landed against per minute in that Joe Ban fight. He got 4 landed per minute against Abubakar. He got 6.19 landed against him against Stoltz. So this guy gets hit quite a bit.
He sure does. Yeah, and that's the thing. You can see it in the numbers that what kind of fighter Gooden is, and you can see it in the finish stats as well, is that, these guys that have tremendous power, sometimes they can absorb a lot more strikes than they throw just because they're going to count on their chin, and we know that Gooden is somebody who can count on his chin. He's only been finished once in 6 losses. It was by knockout, but like we say, it was it was to a middleweight. This is Randy Brown's not a middleweight, so this is a situation where Gooden is very tough. he can absorb those strikes. And sometimes guys like that, when they have that death touch, when they have that transcendental power, they don't really care if they get hit a lot. They'll count on their chin. They'll wait for their opportunity to land the big shot, and they can get people out of there. And like we mentioned, Jared Gooden with the finish stats, we're talking 44% by knockout, 33% by sub. So he is, a diverse finisher, but he can certainly hurt you with those hands, as we saw in the Nicholas Stolze fight. But we got to talk here first about, we got some guys in the room with us here, Monk. We got my guy Borgie 2008 saying, looking forward to hearing from you too. Finally made it to my first live stream. Welcome, Borgie 2008. We appreciate you stopping by, hanging out live with Monk and I as we grind out all the numbers in this very interesting co-main event for UFC Vegas 39. Monk, we got my guy Hammer and Hog in the room. This guy, I'm always giving out greasy 4-leg parlays for him on Just the Tip. Something that I'm going to do tonight at 10 o'clock Central Time. Be there or be square. You're going to figure out the greasy 4-leg parlay that I got queued up for you guys. We're going to find out about Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. We got some great things happening here on Thursday night. It's only Thursday night this week, you guys, because I was on vacation, because I've been trying to tie up some loose ends around the house that I've had to do here today and flying back in from Florida yesterday. That's why we're late this week with Just the Tip and the Balls Deep breakdowns, but we'll be right back to the normal schedule. Next week, we got Tristan Sherhouse in the room saying, what it do? What's going on, Tristan? Good to see you. We got my buddy Chris Colanzis saying, Uncle Weezy dropping some science. Love Brown here. Yeah, Brown is really fun to watch. And he's a favorite for a reason here. We're going to get into the rest of these stats. And we got my guy David in the room saying Brown seems more skilled, but that knockout Gooden had in his last fight was sweet. This fight should be good. Yeah, that's the thing. It's going to be probably Brown winning the minutes here. Because he's the more accurate striker. I think he's the flashier striker. He uses his length very well. And one of the things that we talked about before we went live, Monk, was the leg kicks of that we've seen Randy Brown really deal with some problems with leg kicks, in particular in the Luque fight, and even in the fight that he won more recently against Alex Oliveira. Oliveira was blasting that lead leg there in the first. And you have some stats on Jared Gooden and how often he's thrown leg kicks in the UFC?
I do. Real quick, though, Randy Brown, excuse me, leg strikes landed against per minute, 1.29 per minute. That is 65th out of 67 welterweight fighters in my database. His opponents throw 1.5 leg kicks per minute, also 65th out of 67. So some huge volume, like you alluded to. As far as Jared Gooden, we're going to get the complete opposite here. I don't think Randy Brown's going to have to worry too much about leg kicks unless that's all Gooden's been training. He's thrown 5 leg kicks in his entire UFC career, Jared Gooden. He has landed 4 of them. So, hey, that's 80%. But he is 64th in the division for leg strikes thrown at 0.13 or landed 0.13 per minute. He throws 0.16 per minute. Both, top or bottom 5 positions in that division. So not really thinking Randy Brown's going to have to worry about that too much in this one.
Yeah, and see, that's the next level of stats that when I team up with my guy Monk that we can give you guys here, because we have seen Randy Brown, because he's a 6'3" welterweight. He's got some skinny neuro ass legs, man. So we've seen people really go to attack them in the past. And while Randy Brown is a very capable kickboxer, his first martial art was boxing. So he is heavy on that lead leg. He's got nasty hands, but a lot of people have tried to, bust up that lead leg to take some of the sting out of those hands of Brown. And it's something that we haven't seen Gooden do offensively in the past. Maybe we'll see him go to it in this fight if they've been watching tape and if they got him ready for the best ways to attack Randy Brown's weaknesses here. Maybe we will see Gooden go to those leg kicks, but if he doesn't, Randy Brown's going to be much longer than him. He's got the crisper punches and he's got the much longer kicks. And, we've seen him knock out some really tough dudes in the past. So that's a really interesting wrinkle in those striking stats. And we got Nick Alexander saying Gooden seems he turned a corner the last outing. Well, man, he looked so good against Stolze. We got Mark in the room. Mark Capuzzo saying the GOAT Weezy. Thank you for joining us, Mark. Really appreciate it. And we got David saying, I want to see Romanov go double hammer fist Saturday. Yeah, dude. Well, King Kong, they name him that for a reason, dude. Like, he goes just King Kong on dudes. I mean, that forearm choke of his is just like it's a playground move that the sixth graders do to the kindergartners. And he's in there doing it to grown men.
Grown men that are gigantic grown men, and they're just like, they just go to sleep. Who did he fight? His arms just went, wow. And Dominic Cruz is like, I think he's out.
was that DeLima when he got? Did he get DeLima with the forearm choke?
And that's the third
slept
one
him so fast.
Yeah, I want to see that double forearm choke. Stack him up.
Yeah, dude. Either the King Kong ground and pound double hammer fist or the forearm choke. He's gonna shave ass on Saturday, dude. This is a bad matchup for Jared Vanderaa.
Inside the distance.
That poor guy. I don't know why he signed that contract, man. This is not a good fight for him after what we saw Sergey Spivak do to Vanderaa in the last one, man. That was and Vanderaa asked for that fight. What the hell was he thinking, man? Spivak destroyed him on the ground.
And Spivak got destroyed. I know MMA math doesn't work, but Spivak just got destroyed. So it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I know, man.
This dude's like a minus 900 favorite or something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he opened it like minus 400, and I was even like at that point, I was actually thinking about just throwing a max bet 5 units down to win 1 1/4. Yeah, and I was like, it's heavyweight, one punch lands, you never know. So, but anyway, dude, let's look at these grappling stats here, because we've shown that Randy Brown's probably going to be the better minute winner here on the feet. He's probably going to be the more efficient striker. He's probably going to be the guy that lands more than he absorbs. Both of these guys showing great power, but Brown just a little bit better defensively. Well, a lot better defensively in that he's got a positive 1 significant strike differential, while it's negative 2.5 for Gooden. So it's safe to say from a statistical standpoint that Randy Brown will be the better minute winner and probably has the striking advantage. Of course, Gooden could land a big shot and knock out Randy Brown, and Randy Brown has shown to be chinny in the past. But when we look at, all right, if this fight isn't going the way that one of these guys wants it to go on the feet, who's going to get this fight to the ground? Who's going to be able to go to the grappling and have some success there if they don't like how it's going on the feet? And we can see right here, front and center on the stats is the takedowns and the takedowns attempted. And Randy Brown in 11 fights has gotten 7 of his 15 takedown attempts, 46.67%. He's averaging just under 1 takedown per 15 minutes, 0.7 submission attempts for 15 minutes, and he's getting almost 26% control time. While Jared Gooden has gotten both of his takedown attempts in 3 fights, 100%. He's also getting just under 1 takedown per 15 minutes. He hasn't attempted any submissions, but he's only getting 4.66% control time. And then when we look at the takedown defense, we see that Randy Brown around 71%, not great. 27 of 38 takedowns he's successfully defended. He's getting taken down 1.54 times for 15 minutes, had some subs attempted against him, and his control time percentage against is at 30.26%. So, Randy Brown, even though he's a great striker and he uses his length very well, and even though he's not getting dominated on the ground, I mean, I think it's actually encouraging if you look how efficient Randy Brown has been with his takedown attempts. The fact that he's attempted 15 takedowns, but he's had 38 takedowns attempted against him. We're talking about Randy Brown here. But he's only been out-controlled by about 4.5% of the cage time. So Randy Brown has been a lot more efficient with his grappling, I think, than some people are giving him credit for. And Jared Gooden is being out-controlled at about a 3-to-1 ratio, but his opponents are attempting 3 times as many takedown attempts as him. So there's nothing wrong with that statistic. It's just that Jared Gooden has been a little bit more successful with keeping the fight standing. Although when Nurmagomedov did get that 1 takedown against him, that resulted in all of the control time against. And we're talking about 4.5 minutes of control time in that round for Nurmagomedov. Gooden did not get back up. So, Randy Brown could find some potential here to win some minutes on the ground as well, is what my numbers are telling me. What are you seeing in your stats in terms of the grappling here?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like you said, both guys very low volume takedown offense. Both have a decent takedown defense. Brown over 70, Gooden 83, but also pretty small sample size for Gooden. When Brown does attempt 2 or more takedowns, and that has happened in 4 fights, he actually lands almost 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. So it does go up by about half a takedown there. He has won 2 of those 4 fights. Jared Gooden's takedown landed per 15 numbers are crazy high just because the Stoltz fight was so short and he did land a takedown in that. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Randy Brown, like you said, both guys get out controlled, but Randy Brown, only 5% more control time against than for. So that's still not something you want to see at all. But it's still better than 3-1 from Jared Gooden. The get up time, not very good for either guy. But as you said, again, Jared Gooden did not get up from that one takedown. So his get up time is 268 seconds. That's very low. His hold down time is also very low at 43.5 seconds. Meanwhile, Randy Brown, quicker get up time at about 177, so just under 3 minutes. And then his hold down time, 238 seconds, 7th highest in the division. So actually, when he's on top, like you said, he's able to be more efficient on top and control almost 50% of the grappling time. He has fought 56% of his time inside the distance. He's controlled 46% of that time. Meanwhile, Gooden has fought 19% of his time inside the distance. He's only controlled 24.5% of that time. So you might be right here. I mean, my stats also lean control time for Randy Brown over Jared Gooden. And I really think that, Randy Brown could indeed win some minutes here on the ground if it goes down there. Not really expecting it to, but like you said, if somebody's starts to get pummeled, they might shoot in for a lazy takedown. Maybe the other guy can't defend it very well. And so we see some ground time there. But Randy Brown has the better control time pretty much everywhere. Gets up quicker, holds down longer. Both guys get out controlled. We don't like that, but you never like to see a guy get out controlled for an entire round like you did Jared Gooden. That is, I mean, if you had money on Jared Gooden, that you must have just turn the TV off at that point. Like, this guy can't do anything. I know it was the 3rd round, so he might have been tired, but that's a long time to just take bombs and take, control time and give it to your opponent.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that some people will give him a bit of a pass there because the guy on top of him, his last name was Nurmagomedov.
That's true.
But and
like you said, he was beating him up with his hands for 2 rounds before that. So
that's the problem.
That contradicts
that's the problem.
Yeah.
So maybe you and I are on the same page here, but what I'd like to look at here is, because I'm thinking if Randy Brown wins this fight, right, he could win it inside the distance. He is a great finisher. Now, we know how tough Gooden is, only been finished in 1 out of 6 losses. It was by knockout. But, we saw Nurmagomedov have a lot of success on the feet against him. Alan Jouban, that was a war. And then Nick Stoltze, we just saw Gooden just absolutely starch him. So really his arrow is pointing straight up. But, man, dude, Randy Brown has been fighting killers. Vicente Luque on his resume, Alex Oliveira, Warley Alves, Brian Barberena brings the war every time. Guys like Nico Price, and then Randy Brown subbing Warley Alves with a triangle choke.
Huge.
He's got those freakishly long limbs, and he's just a really unique problem to deal with in the welterweight division because of the size, man. He's just huge.
Huge and long, like you said, those long arms. And we were talking before we started recording. I mean, there's only a 1-inch reach advantage for Randy Brown, according to the numbers, but it might be like the height thing. Like you said, that's a wingspan. What if Jared Gooden just has a wide back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Randy Brown is so long, legs, arms. I mean, the sub of Alex Oliveira was surprising to me in a good way. The sub of Warley Alves is awesome to me. Like when you think of, I thought of Randy Brown as kind of like a stand-up striker kind of guy, but then you go back and you do your tape and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This guy not only knows his shit on the ground, but he's also proving successful with it. And that's more than, I mean, does Jared Gooden have that kind of groundwork? I don't think so. He's good at defending takedowns, but that seems to be about it. Which, you know, obviously that's how you get to the ground for the most part is a takedown. But if it does get to the ground, man, the more and more we talk about this, the more I like Randy Brown on the ground as well.
I like him a lot on the ground, and and he's getting subs in the UFC.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Against
let's look at who
Brazilians.
because we've seen Jared Gooden get subs. Both of these guys, if we take a quick look at the stats here again, the finished stats, we'll see. Jared Gordon has 6 of his 18 wins are by submission. The guy can get subs.
Yep.
The guy's got a ground game, right? And then we look at Randy Brown of his 13 wins, 38% by sub. So that's 2.5.2. Yeah, so that's five of his 13 wins are by submission.
Yep.
So, he's got a bunch of subs, but look, he's getting subs at the UFC level against, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts and Warley Alves. A sub with a one-arm RNC against Alex Oliveira. He's rolling around on the ground with Mickey Gall, who's very dangerous and surviving. He's got a guillotine choke over Eric Montano. That's another UFC submission. He's got a guillotine choke over Ben Brewer in Ring of Combat. And we've got an armbar win over 0-0 Steve Terrell in Ring of Combat. But then if we go and we look at Gooden's submission wins, let's see who the highest level guy that Gooden is submitted. And it might be somebody really good. He got an RNC against 3-13 Jay Jackson. He got a guillotine choke against Marcel Stamps in the second round in island fights. He's got...
And then a bunch of nothing until this beginning of his career.
The first 4 fights of his career, he's got 3 subs against 0-1 Bobby Tucker, 3-3 Brad Taylor, and 0-1 Smith Amasial.
Oh, yeah, that guy, he's big name.
Yeah. I mean,
everybody knows Smith Amasial.
We could start talking about his resume, but we'd be here all night, Monk.
Let's just don't get me started.
But yeah, so we can see, that this guy, Gooden is a very well credentialed mixed martial artist, got a ton of experience, even more experience than Randy Brown. But Brown's experience is at the higher level. His finishes are of higher level opponents. His ground game is finishing much higher level opponents for sure. While Gooden is subbing guys with losing records, most of them very early in his career. So yeah, dude, it does look like we've got a grappling advantage here for Brown, according to the stats. We got a number of striking advantages here for Jared Gooden in the stats. And let's see what the chat has to say here, Monk. And then let's get into these strength of schedule stats, because they're going to be very, very interesting.
Agreed.
So let's see what we got here. We got Grayson in the room, one of my guys here, one of the loyal followers of the channel, saying Randy Brown is too slick for Jared Gooden. I think this will be an ass shaving. Randy Brown is really slick on the ground, you guys. Very slick. Look at that triangle choke he locked up against Warley. That was a thing of beauty. And Monk, the trip takedown he got against Warley was an absolute thing of beauty, dude. His coach said put him on his ass, and he got a double underhooks on the guy. Outside trip, put him right on his back. It was a beautiful takedown. And we do see that even though Randy Brown is only attempting just over 1 takedown a fight, he's getting about half of them. And, so he can get that fight to the ground too. So very slick. And we got Jax Outlaw Ray. What's up, dude? Saying Weezy. Good to see Jax Outlaw. We got Andretti. Big up, Weezy. It's been a while. Big up yourself, Andretti. Good to see you in here. I always miss you guys when I am not doing shows for a while, and it's been too damn long. You got Asphalt in the room saying Weezy straight from vacay was having some serious MMA withdrawal. That's right. The people I went on vacation with, Monk, not MMA fans. So like whenever I was like trying to watch tape or watch the Contender Series. I was kind of like having to, cut away from the group. So it's good when I get back to the house, because me and the Rottweiler, we kind of curl up on the couch and we can watch tape for 8 hours, and he's good with that. So
exactly. No side eyes from anybody.
Exactly, man. And we got my guy Billy Briz from Pub Sports Radio in the room. What's up, Billy? Good to see you. My favorite two cappers. Let's fucking go. Let's go, Billy.
Man.
Let's go balls deep into these stats and find some fucking angles and make some money off of these bookies who shaved me last week. We got Swish Plays Games. I'm feeling the Night Train upset, gentlemen. It would be an upset if Night Train won, but we talked about it, Monk. He's got a ton of power in those hands, and Randy Brown can be chin checked. Absolutely. Yep. And this could absolutely be the type of fight where, because Randy Brown has the striking advantage, because Randy Brown has the grappling advantage, that he's just winning the fight up until he isn't.
Nico Price style. Yep.
And that's how Jared Gooden. So one of the things that I was going to say before we started the strength of schedule numbers was, what do you think about this, Monk? If we're betting Randy Brown, we could see him getting it done a number of different ways. But man, I got a feeling if Jared Gooden wins this fight, it's going to be inside the distance. 3 of 4 Randy Brown's losses have come inside the distance. He's been finished in 75% of the time. And Gooden is a 77% finisher in his own right, and he's got a ton of power in those hands. He showed it in the Stoltze fight. What do you think about that?
That's what I was going to say, towards the end. I think Jared Gooden's path to victory is catching Randy Brown, whether it's, with some shocking punch or something he just doesn't see coming. I just don't see him like over 5 or 3 rounds strategically piecing up Randy Brown and breaking him. I don't see him breaking him. I think if Jared Gooden wins, it's definitely going to be inside the distance, and it's going to be from a shot that Randy Brown just doesn't see coming. Maybe it drops him, a little ground and pound, or maybe he just, knocks him out on his feet too. I don't know, but I agree with that. If Gooden wins, his path is definitely inside the distance knockout, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he does have 6 subs, but still.
He does. He's got subs. I mean, he could finish it inside the distance, but here, Gooden by TKO, the line right now, plus 400, pretty much across the board, and it's plus 460 if you have FanDuel Sportsbook.
That might be something to take a look at. That's his path to victory.
And Gooden inside the distance, if you want to be just a little bit less greedy and say, like, let's include the submission in there because Randy Brown's been subbed a couple of times as well. We could look at plus 330 there. And
that's not terrible.
Dude, I think I don't see Jared Gooden outpointing him. I don't see a guy who gets outstruck by 2.5 significant strikes a minute and has only attempted 2 takedowns in 3 fights and hasn't shown the ability to be able to keep the fight on the ground. I don't see him winning minutes. I don't see him banking rounds. I don't see him winning a decision. So I think if you're on that Gooden side, you got to play him inside the distance. But if you're on the Brown side, I think you're kind of hamstrung. And I think that's why he's a minus 225 favorite, is because he could knock you out. He could submit you. He could just outpoint you for 3 rounds. He's got fantastic conditioning. Randy Brown.
Oh, yeah.
We've never seen him gas out. We've seen him get knocked out. We've seen him get finished, but he's always in the fight until he isn't, until he gets caught. And it's never because of bad conditioning. So, man, that's the way I would play it here. Any thoughts on your end here? Any line numbers you want to go over with us here before we start the strength schedule?
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I did these are new stats for me. So I am compiling all the line histories in the UFC. So Randy Brown, he's 4-2 as a favorite. He is 3-2 as an underdog. So he has winning records both when he's favored and not favored. He has actually, in one of those fights, he was a big underdog, which is less than or equal to 35% implied odds, and he did win that fight. So that is pretty big there. Jared Gooden on the other side, never been an underdog, never been a favorite in the UFC. He is 1-2 as an underdog and 0-1 as a big underdog. So that's just a little bit of history numbers for you there. But yeah, like I said, Jared Gooden, if you're on that side, you almost have to take him inside the distance. Randy Brown, I don't know. I might, if you're on the Brown side, you almost have to just play the money line, right?
that's the way I feel about it. And these are the kind of fighters that I like to bet on, where it's like, they could win by decision because they got great conditioning and a great game plan, and they can sub you, they can knock you out. They got more than one path to victory here. While I feel like Gooden's kind of got to catch him,
Yeah,
he's kind of got to catch him. And Randy Brown is catchable. There's no question
exactly.
about that, and there's reasons to like Gooden here. He's more experienced, he's stronger. He's got, probably more power in his hands, but that's definitely debatable.
Right.
And 100% on his takedowns. So when he's an efficient wrestler when he wants it, but he's not, he's not going to hold down Randy Brown. And I don't think he wants to be on the ground with somebody as long and lanky as Brown. You can get caught up in submissions there, and that's not a good thing. So both of these guys definitely have the ability to submit their opponents.
Yeah, but with the only thing with 4 out of those 6 subs coming from Gooden super early in his career, I feel like maybe he's focused more on his stand-up lately, and then that would tell me he definitely does not want to go to the ground with Randy Brown. So, like I said, yeah, it's going to be Gooden's surprise knockout, or I think just Brown money line. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. Not sure if I'm going to play either one. I do like both of those lines, though, because I do think Randy Brown is going to get it done. But as far as predicting a decision or inside the distance, that's pretty dangerous in this one.
Yeah, I agree, man. So let me just get through the rest of the comments here. We got Andy MG1 in the room saying Uncle Weezy the GOAT. We got Swoosh Plays Games saying, who's our ass shaving of the week? We will be finding out tonight, 10 o'clock Central Time. Just the tip with Uncle Weezy on this channel right here. Don't miss it. We'll be going through all 10 fights on the card, give predictions for all 10 of those fights. And then we're going to do a greasy 4-leg parlay for my guy Hammer and Hog, and then we'll finish up with the ass shaving of the week. And there are definitely some really good candidates this week, my friend.
There are some wide lines out there. I'd be surprised if you didn't take spoiler alert, Romanov, but I am looking forward to seeing. I have 4 or 5 fights that are above 60% implied odds.
Yes. It's that kind of a card. There's definitely a lot of choices here. There's a lot of people who have been shaved. We got some shavers out there. Dude,
some bald
my
asses.
cup runneth over with potential ass shaving possibilities for this week. So stay tuned. And we got the pushball saying this matchup is so sketchy. I'm staying away. Yeah, I hear you, man.
This week.
This is a tough one. That's why we had to go balls deep into these stats, Monk.
Yep.
It's a greasy one. The line is wide, but it's hard to find where the value is. Exactly. Nick Alexander saying this fight might play out on the feet. I tend to agree with you. I think Monk does as well.
Same. Yep.
Yeah. Brown decision or Gooden KO. Yeah, I like that because Gooden is very, very difficult to finish. But I just think he could be finished if maybe his opponents had shown a little more urgency. Especially Nurmagomedov in particular. This is a dog or bet for me, dog or pass, but I'll probably stay away as well, is what Andy's saying. And we got Silky B saying I'm staying away from this one too.
And staying away.
Yeah, are we also getting a Just the Tip stream, Uncle Weezy? Yes, we are. Just the Tip tonight, 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern. Please join me. And we got Borgie saying, Randy, second round sub. Randy finishes fights, Borgie. I could see that happening.
I do like the Randy. I want to see a Randy Brown submission in this fight. I just do. I don't know why. I don't have anything against Jared Gooden. I'd like Randy Brown. I want to see him get a submission here. That would be awesome.
I've been a fan of Brown ever since I first saw him fight. He's one of those guys. He's such a unique puzzle to solve. He's huge for the division. He's well-rounded. He's fun to watch. So yeah, man. And then Gooden, he's just as fun to watch. He's electric. He hits so hard like a truck. So this is a good one here. But if we look at these strength of schedule numbers here, Monk, I'll give you mine first, and then you can let us know what you've got on your end. But we've got a 1.74 win-to-loss ratio of Randy Brown's overall opponents, over an 11-fight sample size. So this guy is definitely fighting good fighters, while Jared Gooden, a 1.0 ratio. 8.73 total fights for Randy Brown, the average record of a Randy Brown opponent. 5.55 wins, 3.18 losses. While for Jared Gooden, it's a 1 win-to-loss ratio, 2.33 and 2.33. So Brown fighting the better win-loss competition and the more experienced competition. If we stack their wins up side by side, the win over Nick Stolte, he's 0-2 in the UFC, so it's a 0 ratio. Jared Gooden has never had a UFC win over somebody who has a UFC win. And
That's
if we look at
huge.
Randy Brown, he's beating guys on aggregate that have 8 total UFC fights and a winning win-loss record at 4.71 wins, 3.29 losses, 1.43 ratio is the win-loss ratio of the guys that Randy Brown is beating. So, when he's fighting a 1-2 Jared Gooden, that looks like a fight that he can win. And then if we see who these guys are losing to, Jared Gooden, a 3.5-3 record is the average opponent that beats Gooden. 6.5 total fights, 1.17 win-loss ratio. While really Brown is losing to guys that have fantastic win-loss records. 7 wins, 3 losses, 10 UFC fights on average, and a 2.33 win-loss ratio. Quickly going through the last 5 here. Win by sub over Alex Oliveira. Loss by knockout to Vicente Luque. Win by sub over Warley Alves, win by knockout over Brian Barberena, and a loss by knockout to Nico Price. All of Randy Brown's last 5 fights have finished inside the distance, win or lose. While Nick Stolte, Jared Gooden's most recent win was by knockout. He lost 2 unanimous decisions to Burbakar Nurmagomedov and Alan Jouban, and then pre-UFC wins over Trent McCown by knockout, and Jay Jackson, I think, who was 3-13 going into that fight by sub. Gooden 3-2 in his last 5. Randy Brown also 3-2 in his last 5. Both of these guys finishing a lot of fights for and against. What do you got for us on the strength of schedule, my man?
For sure. Like you said, each of them 3-2 in their last 5. And I only go back 5 fights for my strength of schedule numbers. I compile them a lot like the BCS. So I take the last 5 opponents and then their last 5 opponents and then do all the math on the back end. Randy Brown, I think, wins strength of schedule here. It's not too close. It's a little close. His opponent winning percentage in his last 5 is 70.7%. Jared Gooden, last 5 opponents win percent, only 62. I have Randy Brown's last 5 strength of schedule at a 72, and then Jared Gooden at a 64.5. So a decent difference here. The big number is Jared Gooden's strength of victory in his last 5, only 48.94. These are measured out of 100, so that is less than 50. And that is very bad for strength of victory. That's against Nicholas Stoltz. UFC caliber or not, he was not UFC caliber at that time, at least. Pretty much got smashed. But Randy Brown in his last 5, his last 5 opponents on average have 24.5 total fights. They're 17-7 basically. So pretty decent, decent strength of schedule. I have him a little more than average for this card as far as strength of schedule ratios go. But let me take a look here. As far as overall strength of schedule, I'm pretty sure he's one of the highest that I have, if I could find where I have it. So I have Damon Jackson has a higher strength of schedule, Charles Rosa, Tim Elliott, and then it's Randy Brown. So I'm really liking, even if we play the name game like you just did, we got Cowboy Oliveira, Vicente Luque, Warley Alves, Barberena, Nico Price, and then, Alan Jouban, maybe Nurmagomedov are the 2 bigger names on Jared Gooden's record. So even by the name game, Gooden doesn't win that. I love what you said. The last 5 fights for Randy Brown, all finishing inside the distance, win or loss. That is absolutely huge. Other than that, Gooden's never been subbed, has a very small knockout rate as far as getting knocked out. Very tough to finish according to that. I don't know, man. The strength of schedule has to go to Randy Brown. I just feel like I'm giving too many categories to Randy Brown, but he kind of wins some of the striking, he kind of wins the ground game, and he kind of wins the strength of schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way. And I've just got Randy Brown's career, UFC schedule up there on the screen, and we see, those first 3 wins over Matt Dwyer, Eric Montano, Brian Camozzi. Those guys are 2-8 in the UFC. But then when you look at the wins after that, Mickey Gall 6-3, Barberena 6-6, who's fought a ton of killers. Warley Alves 8-5, a win over Colby Covington on there. And then Alex Cowboy Oliveira, 11-8. 19 UFC fights, a veteran. And then the losses, Vicente Luque, 14-3, Nico Price, 6-5, and a freak, hammer fist from the bottom. Bilal Muhammad, a guy who he stacks wins like flapjacks, 10-3. And then Michael Graves, who's a killer, just a wrestler that is just, with an endless gas tank, who's a real problem for anybody who's got not great wrestling defense. Those are his only 4 losses, 32-12 record. If you sum up those 4 guys that beat him,
damn good.
So, and even the guys that he's beating on the aggregate have a 33-30 record. If you look at them, and then we strip out those losses from their record, it's like, it's 33-24, or actually 33-23, because, if they had never fought Randy Brown, those guys' records, would be 33-23. So very impressive. It does look like Randy Brown kind of has the advantage everywhere. I think if you're on that Gooden side, you could feel real safe saying, you know what, I'll just take that plus 330 inside the distance. Or even if you want to be a little bit cheekier, that plus 400 by knockout. I think that's his path to beat Randy Brown. I think he's going to have to do it inside the distance. He's just not a good enough minute winner, round winner in order to win a decision here, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just don't see it. Round by round data, I mean, both of these guys have a round 1 finish win. Randy Brown has 2 finishes in round 2, 2 finishes in round 3. Randy Brown also been finished 3 times in the second round and once in the third. Gooden also finished once in the third. So we're pretty spread out here as far as finishes go as well. Like, I mean, that 3 second round finish losses for Randy Brown kind of jumps out at me there. So, hey, if you're really trying to get greasy and you really like Jared Gooden and you really like Jared Gooden by knockout, why not go Jared Gooden by knockout in round 2, baby?
Yeah, man, we could maybe even see did they have that line? Let's see if we can get a Monk special here.
Yeah, I just saw
Gooden wins in round 2 just on its own on the aggregate is around plus 893. And then if you put knockout on there, you could get plus 1400 plus 1500. Hey, your Uncle Monk over there, that's pretty sweet.
Maybe, I mean, Randy Brown never been finished in the first, so if you're looking for finish, maybe a little sprinkle on round 2 and round 3. It's happened before.
Absolutely, man. So it sounds like we're both on Randy Brown here, huh?
Yeah, I think I'd have to completely be going against 90% of what we have just talked about in the past hour to pick Jared Gooden. That said, I don't think Jared Gooden is dead in the water by any means. Like we talked about ad nauseum, that big knockout shot could potentially come at any time. And in his last 5, Randy Brown has a chin dex of 1.5. That is super, super high, just for the record. Super high. So, hey, but that said, I mean, if he doesn't get chin checked, I think this is Randy Brown 80% of the time if he doesn't get chin checked.
Yeah, man, that's for sure. And I tend to agree with you there. I think we're both picking Brown. You guys, I think we did it. We're about 58 minutes here. I think we covered just about all the angles that we need to cover on this fight, Monk. So I'm going to tell these guys right now, check me out tonight, 10 o'clock Central Time for Just the Tip. I'd love it if you guys would join me. But Monk, thank you for coming on Balls Deep Breakdown with me, man. It's always good to carve up these fights with somebody else, especially somebody that's got even more stats than me. Please tell my viewers where they can find you on a regular basis. Tell them what you're up to and what you got going on in the future.
Definitely. I appreciate you having me on. I always love chopping up stats, especially with you. It's so much fun talking about stats with another stat guy. We can kind of nerd out for an hour, and it's really great. As far as where you can find me, hit me up on @Monkmaddox on Twitter. Otherwise, my YouTube channel, same name, Monkmaddox. I put out weekly breakdowns for prelims, full cards, and then I try to do a couple of breakdowns of single fights as well. Just kind of get into the stats. I'm coming up with more and more stats, trying to every week to get out to you guys. I'm really working hard on betting history lines, stuff like that. Kind of try to put those together and get them out to you as well, because I know that could be super important. I haven't seen, many of those numbers anywhere else. So that's kind of my little project at the time being. But other than that, not doing shit, man. Maybe watch a little Thursday night football. Definitely going to watch a little Just the Tip later
Yes.
with Uncle Weezy, 10 p.m. Central. I got to get my ass shaving of the weekend too. So other than that, yeah, that's it. Check me out on Twitter, YouTube, and I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the chat, and I appreciate all the viewers. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely, Monk. Thanks for coming on. Thank all you guys for watching. We're going to get going. I'll be back in a couple hours after I get done researching all the rest of these fights. And I'm probably going to be up until about 2 watching football because I'm TiVo in that game. Got to see what happens there. But yeah, you guys, thanks for joining us. God bless each and every one of you. And I will catch you guys soon. You guys, let's cash some tickets, make some money off these bookies. Talk to you guys soon. We're going to end it right here.